October 22nd, 2024. I am Dave Biddle. I'll be joined by Mr. Jonah Booker in just a moment. JBook and I will give our predictions for tomorrow's top 5 matchup that no one expected would be a top 5 matchup. Indiana, the story of college football this year. Buckeyes favored by 11.5. I looked this morning. This spread's been all over the place. It opened at 10.5. It got all the way up to 13.5. Now it's come back down. Probably be a lot because of the injury to Seth McLaughlin. And JBook and I will talk about that after we give our predictions. Because I still have not talked to JBook about the new look offensive line for the Buckeyes. They had the new look offensive line. Now they have to shift gears for a second time. So we'll get into all that and more. Returning as a sponsor of our show is Cornbread Hemp, and they tell us you guys really like this product because you keep ordering it and using the code Bucknuts, which is great because we can get you guys a good deal. Cornbread Hemp invented the first USDA organic THC edible, and it's legal for anyone 21 and above in the United States. The gummies have 10 milligrams of THC per gummy for just the right dose, perfect for taking off the edge without making you feel anxious or paranoid like other cannabis edibles. If you're looking for a healthier way to enjoy a carefree moment, you have to give Cornbread Hemp a try. As a special offer for Bucknuts Morning 5 listeners, you can get 30% off your first order. Just visit cornbreadhemp.com/Bucknuts. Use promo code Bucknuts at checkout. Again, that's cornbreadhemp.com/Bucknuts and use code Bucknuts for 30% off your first order. Cheers to a healthier happy hour. And cheers to Jonah Booker. Good to see you on a Friday as always, my friend. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Hey, that North Face that you got on is clean, man.
Well, I needed it this morning, man. I woke up to the snow here in Columbus. I imagine there's not snow in Arizona.
No snow in Arizona. It's a little chilly in the morning, but by lunchtime it should be up into the 80s today. So it's a great weather right about now. And if you're a golfer, prime golfing season.
Man, I'll be there in late February. So
we're gonna have to link up.
The last week of February for us, a little spring training. Yeah, we got to hook up for sure. All right, brass tacks. We'll break the game down. Let's just get to our predictions. I will, as usual, as you're giving yours, I will post mine.
All right, I have it. The Buckeyes winning this game 35-24. I think this is going to be an over game here. Look at that, 35-17. We're close, Dave.
We're close. Got Ohio State score exactly the same. And maybe I'm not giving – because I really believe in this Indiana team. I just feel like, man, I mean, in any other – this was this exact Indiana team, same roster, same coaching staff, but let's say they had dropped a game or two. Maybe this would be kind of a look-ahead game for Ohio State, even though Michigan's not good this year. But, man, Indiana's got Ohio State's full attention, being the number 5 team in the country. Some of the things that their head coach said coming into the year. So, all right, let me get your prediction on here as well so we can post this. So you have 35-24. Yeah, I know there's been people in the chat say just win by 2. I don't care. I'm in that camp. Just win, baby.
If Ohio State wins only by 2, the SEC meltdown is going to be tremendous, Dave. Because I was on the Bill King show down there in Memphis. Our good friend, you know Bill, right?
Oh yeah, very well. Yeah, Bill's a good guy.
Yeah, I love him. And I was on the show Thursday, and a lot of the talking points he asked me is, they're saying down there in SEC country that they really, really need Ohio State to boat race Indiana here, because that will strengthen their argument for the foot soldiers down there in the South to say, hey, see, told you Indiana doesn't belong. They're fraudulent. They had a weak schedule. Once they came up against a team with championship caliber talent, they got ran out of the stadium. So that's kind of the SEC watch. And Fox is going to do a crazy amount of ratings here, Dave, because all of SEC is going to be watching this game.
It's hard to put an exact number on it, but let's do it. We're having fun here on a podcast. I've been asked, first of all, I don't think it's going to be a blowout. I hope, I don't think, even if my prediction is right, I don't think that's necessarily a blowout. Indiana, to me, just can't afford to get blown out. I think if my prediction's right, that Ohio State wins comfortably, but it's not a blowout. I think Indiana is still a lock to get in, presuming they beat Purdue, because here's my rationale there. If they were ranked 8th right now, there might be some trepidation. The committee, knowing who they've played, knowing their strength of schedule, says they're the number 5 team right now. If they go on the road to the number 2 team, and that's their only loss, and they don't get blown out, I think Indiana's a lock. Now, they might be like the 10th or 11th seed and have to play on the road first round, but I feel like if they don't get blown out, like let's say 30 or more. That's the number I'll put on. I think they'll make it.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the number 5 ranking. They've been pretty consistent, Dave. Just thinking that the Indiana team is handling their business. They are doing what they're supposed to do. Okay, you can knock their schedule all they want to. If Indiana was struggling to beat mid Big Ten teams, then you can make an argument and say, okay, they're not as good as what their record shows, but they've been absolutely smashing teams. And so they've been playing the people that's been in front of them, and they've been absolutely dominating. And the committee feels like, hey, this is a quality football team. And so you have a situation here, Dave. If Indiana does show that they can at least hang with Ohio State, I agree. I think they're going to be in the playoffs. Now, the question is, will they host a playoff game in Bloomington? Will they force an Ole Miss or a Tennessee, Texas A&M, somebody like that have to go travel to Bloomington in December? I mean, I can't wait, Dave. I mean, the talking point this week is because the weather's starting to turn. You mentioned you woke up to some snow. Can you imagine these SEC teams playing in this type of environment? You're watching that Browns Steelers game last night. If it's a night game in Big Ten country in Happy Valley, Georgia, in a whiteout in Happy Valley on that type of playing surface and it's frozen, man, that's going to be made for TV. I can't wait.
It's going to be great. And I think if Indiana loses to Ohio State but keeps it really close, I do think that they won't fall past 8th. I mean, because again, if you keep it close, the number 2 team in the nation, according to the committee already thinks you're 5th. Are they really going to drop you from 5 to 9? Probably not. I mean, Indiana probably would be hosting a first-round game if they can lose a close game to Ohio State. Now, if they win, whole different conversation there. We don't want to have that conversation.
What you think about Boise State getting a projected bye? Isn't that crazy?
Yes, it's ridiculous how they did this. They should have just said the top 4 teams, according to the committee, final rankings are the top 4 teams. Really complicated, right? The rationale is, I'm sure they tried to have this BS where they want the conference championship games to still matter a lot when everybody was saying they don't matter. So they decided, we're going to make them matter by giving the top 4 conference champions a first round bye. But like the scenario I talked about over the summer didn't come true. But I was like, what if like Utah gets to the Big 12 championship game at 10-2, and then they lose? Or I'm sorry. Let's say a 9-3 Utah team got there and they won, and they're 10-3 Utah, and they're ranked maybe like 16th, and they'd be maybe getting a bye in the first round. It's ridiculous. They have to change how they do the byes going forward, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think Boise absolutely deserves a crack at the bat, swing at the bat for the playoffs, but getting a bye, man, all conferences are not created equal. Them getting a bye is just absolutely crazy to me. I bet you there's going to be a lot of changes. Here's a scenario where the SEC is going to kick and scream and fight, Dave. One, if Boise State gets a bye over some of the SEC teams in the playoff. 2, if you're looking at the brackets that was released on Tuesday, all 3 SEC teams having to travel north in December. And if you, let's say 2 out of the 3 SEC teams lose in Big Ten country, what's the narrative going to be next year, Dave? It's going to be, like you said, Boise doesn't deserve a bye. It should be the top 4 ranked teams. And 2, it's not fair that we have to go play in those type of elements. We want to have these games at a neutral, sterile environment so that we don't have to go play in the snow in the north in December. You know what's coming down the pipeline. The Paul Finebaums of the world, they've been kicking and screaming and crying. And I was driving around listening to Paul Finebaum the other day, and his argument was Indiana would be a 5, maybe a 6-win team if they were playing in the SEC. So in that scenario, in their mind, they're not worthy of even being in the playoffs if they lose to Ohio State. Like their whole argument is a bunch of hypotheticals, or what ifs. And the one argument that they always use is, Well, Vegas opening line says that this team will be favored by X team. You still got to line up and play it. I mean, Josh Pate released the hypothetical Vegas lines, and I think it was the SEC teams were 1.5 point favorite against all of the Big Ten teams if they're playing on the road. I mean, it was let's just call it a pick 'em. When you got the weather elements that's going to play a factor. I mean, some of these, and Bill King made the point, Dave, some of these kids in the SEC have never seen snow in their life. Some of these SEC kids have never been in weather below 40 degrees. And so you're asking them to come up north and play in those type of environments and get accustomed to it. It's going to be a tough task.
It makes Feinbaum and those guys mad. That just adds to the awesomeness, in my opinion. If Indiana gets in, so hopefully Ohio State takes care of business, and Indiana still gets in. Big Ten will get 4 teams in. I love it. I will say this: not that we're going to be crying for Oregon. How ridiculous is this going to be? Talking about one more thing about the buys. So Oregon, let's say they beat Washington. They head to the Big Ten championship game 12-0. Number 1 team in the country. They already beat Ohio State. Yeah, by 1 point in Eugene, but they beat Ohio State. Let's say Ohio State beats Oregon by a last-second field goal. Ohio State wins the Big Ten championship. Oregon is ranked 1 at the time. Their one loss is to number 2 Ohio State. They also beat number 2 Ohio State, and their one loss to Ohio State is the last-second field goal. Oregon would then drop from 1 to 5, not in the rankings, but as far as the seeding. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, that's crazy. Now, let me ask you this before we move on. How would you feel about being in that 5 spot? That seems like that's the sweet spot because the way it's projected now, they will have Ohio State. They had Ohio State losing projection-wise to Oregon in the Big Ten championship and getting the 5th seed against Colorado. Can you imagine the Buckeyes versus Prime? Well, and Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter, like what type of ratings and how crazy the hype would be surrounding that game. And then the winner of that game gets a Boise State who's sitting on a bye. Like, how would you feel about that 5th spot?
I still want the 1 spot, but I understand the argument of the 5th spot. The only thing I would say, first of all, I would love that that'd be the ultimate consolation prize to be able to host a first-round game at the Horseshoe. Here's the problem for Ohio State. If they didn't have to play in the Big Ten championship game, I'd be more okay with it. But then they're playing in the Big Ten championship game, assuming they do. That'd be their 13th game. Now, instead of having to win 3 games to win the national championship, now you got to win 4. So that's a lot of games, man. Like I would really like to have that bye after the Big Ten championship game. But if you get the 5 seed, I mean, yeah, you're right. I mean, the path to the semifinals looks pretty tasty.
And here's the thing I would say about that before we move on. We're holding on by a thread with this offensive line, Dave. I mean, the less wear and tear that you can put on this offensive line, and because injuries are just – this is the time of season where injuries just pop up. I mean, Seth's torn Achilles. There was some, speculation that it was tight after the Northwestern game, and he popped it with a non-contact injury in practice. You just never know when something's going to pop up. So the less wear and tear that you're going to have on your body playing an extra game, I'm all for it.
I love the foundation taking a victory lap. I have my foundation shirt on Wednesday's show. I hope you guys are watching Wednesday's show.
I had it on. I had mine on last week.
You did. You had yours on last Friday, which was Foundation doing a great job. And last time I checked, the foundation is not partnered up with the team that we hate the most on an NIL deal. So they're doing a good job all the way around. Good job out of Brian and all of his peeps at the foundation. And JBook and I rock the gear. Dan Rubin rocks the gear. Foundation gear. So
hey, it feels good as a Buckeye fan that you don't have to overspend the amount that you have to do like Michigan just to keep a kid who's 25 minutes from campus home. Like record-breaking deal. Yeah, I mean, Sharon Moore is going up on this soapbox preaching like he's Martin Luther King yesterday, talking about the culture and everything, knowing darn well you had to throw out a record-breaking bag to get this kid just to stay home 25 minutes away. Like, cut the BS out, Sharon.
Oh man. Oh geez. 8 days away. We don't have to focus on Indiana. Even you and I are focused on Indiana, but I know 8 days away from the game that I've been circled for a long time. All right, yeah, let's get to the offensive line, man. I feel like now if they have no more injuries, they might be able to hold this together, but they cannot afford any more injuries. You're right. They've already lost 40% of their starting line. I would argue, and I think Donovan Jackson's been playing really well. I would argue the two best linemen on the team, and Josh Simmons and Seth McLaughlin, not good. All right, so they decided to move Hinsman to center, as you know. Sierreveld to left guard. I guess the good news for spin doctor is Hinsman's got 12 starts under his belt at center last year. He's bigger now. Sierreveld at least started 2 games at left guard this year when Donovan Jackson missed the first couple games while he was nursing a minor injury. Can they get the job done? Not just barely beat Indiana. Can this line, if they don't have any more injuries, get the Buckeyes where they need to be? Are you highly skeptical of that?
I think they can get it done, Dave. I'm confident that this offensive line is going to come and play extremely well. I thought it was very telling that after Seth's injuries, you heard a lot of guys whispering and saying that, hey, they're ready to go do this, play well for Seth and the guys that aren't going to have the opportunity to play in this type of showcase game. Like, I get fired up talking about this, Dave, because you come to Ohio State for these type of games. This is the big stage. This is the bright lights. All eyes of college football will be on this game. You don't come here to be a bus rider and steak eater your entire career. It's not just a free ride. Like, hey, your number's called. Let's go. Let's go. It's time to, like Donovan Jackson said, he said that this week as well. Like, hey, vacate. This isn't a free vacation. Come on. Your number's called. Time to strap it up and play some football. And I agree 100%. Now, they're going against a foe who is very good up front. I think Mikael Kamara, their defensive lineman, is an absolute beast. 9 sacks on the season, 50-plus pressures generated so far. They do a lot of freaky stuff up front with twists and stunts. And they're definitely going to try to do that to confuse this offensive line who haven't played together this starting 5 yet. So they're going to see a lot of things. So communication is going to be big. That's why I believe that they decided to move Carson to the center spot, because he's going to be able to help with that communication and stuff. You move the backup center in there. Even though he's a former high school Ohio wrestler, he's wet behind the ears, very green. And so the communication up front, especially when you have an active defensive line like Indiana, it's going to be very important here. So I think that this is going to be a heck of a game. But Kurt Cignetti, man, he is cocky, Dave. He is their head coach is very, very arrogant. You got to not they got to knock him back down just a little bit here. But hey, I appreciate that he's confident in his squad, but he's borderline arrogant.
So far, he's backed it up and then some. That was one of the boldest statements I've heard at Big Ten Media Days. It's one thing if you're speaking to the crowd at Indiana basketball like he was, and you're talking about Purdue sucks. And by the way, so does Ohio State and Michigan. Okay, it's one thing. You're basically at a pep rally. When you're at Big Ten Media Days, it's very buttoned up. You know, especially the one that they show on Big Ten Network. It's like every coach goes for like 15 minutes. If you're like maybe Purdue, they have to have the coach leave like 5 minutes early because they're out of questions. Where Ryan Day has people want to ask questions for days. For him to get up there, Cignetti, and say, "All I do is win. Google me," and then and people are making fun of him, like, "Who does this guy think he is?" And then Indiana's sitting here now at 10-0, 5th in the country. It's wild. But you're right. He's also kind of a weird guy. Have you noticed that? He's very cocky, very confident. When he's interviewed during games, he's very, very strange.
Yeah. I think he was on the Urban Meyer podcast with that Big Noon pregame show crew and he was talking. He was like, "Yeah, our locker room is not PG-13, meaning that it's X-rated as far as the language and stuff that they use." But he said, "We'll be ready," and kind of gave like that smirk. And don't forget what he called when he first got hired there. He did his infamous Tressel speech at the basketball game. Said Purdue sucks, Ohio State sucks, Michigan sucks. I mean, so far he's slayed Michigan.
2 out of 3, he was right.
Yeah, 2 out of 3, he's right. So he came in there with a type of confidence. The one thing I do appreciate about him is early on in the season. You remember when the whole talking point was no Big Ten team that's traveled 3 time zones has won a game besides Indiana at UCLA. They did an interview with him and asked him, like, hey, how did you guys do it? And he looked at them like they were crazy. And he was like, I don't give a rat's, you know what, about traveling 3 time zones. They try to get us to go out there early for this game. He goes, I told them we're going to arrive late. We're going to show up, eat our dinner, go to bed, wake up in the morning, whoop their butt, and get home for dinner. I mean, that's the type of man that he is. Like, he's a no filter, like no BS. He says that they don't have long meetings. They're in and out. He has a rule. Do not be late for your meetings and make sure you're prepared. And that's just how he are. He runs a simple system. He said he wants to keep things simple so that they can play fast. But he's done great things there, but it's time to humble them. I mean, BTA, belt to you know what, come Saturday.
no BIA, BTA. Yeah. I like that. We have both. We have BIA and BTA. I love it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You gotta go BTA Saturday.
Belt to ass. Not that I ever experienced that growing up from my dad or anything. Anyway, not to get my dad in trouble. Okay, we're gonna get to more. So I want to get JBook's thoughts on Sonny Styles, this defense overall. What is JBook seeing from this defense since the Oregon game? To me, it looks like a lot like the Oklahoma State defense that Knowles ran when he was there, when he had them as a top 5 defense, just with much better players here at Ohio State. So curious to get JBook's thoughts on Sonny Styles, the defense overall. Can Denzel Burke step it up? But we'll let you guys know about Prize Picks. I love Prize Picks. If you're into daily fantasy, you will love Prize Picks. I'm very much into daily fantasy, and I love Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action. Join over 10 million users and sign up today. So all you got to do is download the Prize Picks app. You use code Bucknuts. You get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. You think Justin Jefferson will get more than 83.5 yards receiving? You think Christian McCaffrey is going to rush for more than 75.5 yards? Cook up hot takes with your friends and win real money this football season on Prize Picks. Again, download the Prize Picks app today. Use code Bucknuts to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use code Bucknuts to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. All right, defense. Seems like Sonny Styles is settling in as a linebacker. I think it's easy to forget. Oh, he should still be a sophomore really right now. This is his first time playing linebacker, but it seems like he's finally like just molding into the guy maybe we expected. Your thoughts on that? And just what are you seeing overall from this defense since the Oregon game?
Sonny's playing much better. I think the linebackers overall have been pretty solid. Cody Simon is playing at a potential first, second team, all Big Ten type of level, and they definitely needed that. The defense, I think they are definitely more exotic with their looks. When you have Tyleek kicked out to a wide 9 and some of the packages, that definitely tells you the variations that they're working with here. And the biggest thing for me when it comes to the defense for this game, Dave, is going to be won or lost at the cornerback position. Iggy and Denzel Burke. Right now, I was looking up at PFF grades. Denzel Burke he's giving up an 84.4% winning percentage to wide receivers. Basically, anytime that he's been targeted, the wide receiver has caught the ball on him 84% of the time this season. So he definitely needs to have one of his best games. The back shoulder throw, they are very, very good at stretching the ball down the field in the back shoulder throw. When it's executed perfectly, the back shoulder throw, it is very difficult to stop. It's like a pitcher's curveball. If the pitcher's on and that ball's breaking, it's very, very hard to touch it. Igbinosun, man, and Chim D-Check will agree with me like, hey, this guy just be holding sometimes. Like, hey, you're in great position. You have excellent coverage. You got the leverage. You're sitting on top of him. Get your hands off of him. Like, some of his penalties that he gets called for, Dave, are unnecessarily because he's in great coverage, great position in the hands. The question is, will they let them play the referees like they did against Penn State in the top 5 matchup, or are they going to call it the way they called it against Nebraska, where Igbinosun was penalized like 3-4 times for holding and pass interference? That's going to be critical because if you're the Buckeyes, you got to jump out on them fast. It's critical that you jump out on them fast. This program and Ryan Day teams, they've had a propensity of playing with their food early on in the games and not starting fast. And next thing you know, you're in the tight battle. And then third quarter, they kind of turn it on. I don't think Jim Knowles' defense have given up a touchdown in the third quarter for weeks now. So that's the big thing, because if you can get Indiana in a situation where they haven't been all season, it's going to make them extremely uncomfortable. Once you start making that offense, which is a balanced offense on Indiana, one-dimensional, now you can start to let that defensive line pin their ears back. Now you can say, hey, go after the quarterback. You can start to do some packages if you want to continue to build off the jack, because they said they're going to keep running the jack position, which means Mitchell Melton and CJ Hicks are going to have opportunities to go rush the quarterback. They're headstrong that they're going to continue to do that, especially when you saw Hicks kind of get in there on 2 sacks against Northwestern. He didn't overshoot it. So if you're able to jump out on Indiana quick, make them one-dimensional, make them uncomfortable, the crowd starts getting into it, the atmosphere starts to get contagious. You start to feel that in the stadium, Dave. Indiana hasn't. I mean, some of these kids, a bulk of these kids have come from the lower level. They've come from JMU. They've never played in this type of big game. If the crowd is fired up and it's deafening in there on 3rd and long, now Ohio State's up 14-0. Guess what? That rushing attack that they're really proficient at has to go to the wayside, because you're having to throw the football to get back into it. That's when this defense can really tee off on them.
And Indiana's been blowing everybody out until the second half of Michigan. Then they had a different look in their eye. I was like, oh, we're actually in a football game here. It looked like they were going to blow out Michigan, as you know. It was 17-3 a couple weeks ago in Bloomington. Michigan came back, and Michigan really dominated the second half. Indiana won the football game 20-15, of course. But, man, I wonder if that was just like a one-half aberration, or if maybe Indiana, maybe they were exposed a little bit there in the second half.
Yeah, I think Michigan held them to 17 yards or something like that in the third quarter. I mean, at one point, and it was so bad because Sharon Moore was literally trying to coach Michigan out of that game.
Yes, he was.
Like he was absolutely awful coaching in that Indiana game. I mean, every time Alex Orji came in, you knew what was coming. Indiana was basically shooting 10 guys 8 yards from the line of scrimmage because they knew Alex Orji can throw. Like Davis Warren was moving the ball, and then they would take him out and then get stuck with Alex Orji. And then what you started to see was Michigan was hitting them with them body blows, like just hitting them with those rib shots over and over. And you started to see a little, that shield from Indiana, that confidence and that swagger, it started to break down a little bit. And then they made some plays when they needed to keep the ball and pretty much nailed it out at the very end there. But Michigan showed a little bit there, like, hey, you can give them some body blows. Now, the thing that Michigan was able to do is they was able to be a little bit more balanced, where their rushing attack started to click a little bit against Indiana. Now, they have the number 2 ranked rushing defense in the country, supposedly, but you're basing those stats on who they've played. They're giving up 2.5 yards per carry, Indiana. Can the Buckeyes average 4 yards to 4.5 yards per carry? That's what I'm going to be looking at, because if the Buckeyes can average around that 4 to 4.5 yards, that means they're controlling the line of scrimmage. And if that's the case, I can see them winning by 2 scores easily if they're controlling that line of scrimmage, getting that 4.5 yards a pop. Because now you're talking about, hey, we're sitting in 3rd and 1. We're sitting in 3rd and 2. Guess what? The great equalizer at that point is Will Howard's legs. Now you can start utilizing Will Howard's big body and his, like you did against Penn State, where we can bully ball those guys in the second half here, just moving the chains.
I'm going to get you out of here on this. We mentioned Denzel Burke earlier. what are you seeing, man? It's not just him he got beat, deep against Oregon. That happens. I'm saying it's like a little bit of everything, in my opinion. You're the expert here. You played D1 college football. You were a defensive back. What are you seeing out of Burke? I'm seeing like a lack of physicality. I thought he was a physical corner. Is it a lack of confidence? Is there multiple factors? What are you seeing out of Burke?
Yeah, I think it's confidence, Dave. I mean, at some point, he desperately needs a big game. This is a money game because you're going to have a boatload of NFL scouts there. As a defensive back, you're always trained to have a short memory. You're going to get beat. It's the nature of the beast. They're on scholarship as well on the other side, those wide receivers. You're going to give up a first down. You're going to give up a touchdown and stuff, but you got to be able to have a short memory. The problem that he's running into is how long can you continue to erase these memories and thoughts that you're consistently getting beat? I mean, 84% success rate being thrown at, that's pretty tough to deal with, Dave. So to me, I think it's a confidence issue. I mean, his technique doesn't look like it's incredibly bad. Because remember, I think it was 2 years ago, because he's kind of had like a roller coaster career. Really good freshman year, had a sophomore slump, and his sophomore slump was primarily due to his technique. His technique really suffered his sophomore year. Junior year, they cleaned up his technique. He had a big bounce back year, looked great, had the option to go to the NFL. Senior year, he comes back and he's struggling this year. So to me, I think it's his confidence. If he can get his confidence up and make a couple plays, then you start to see Denzel Burke start to get into his mode. I mean, it's like I reference back to baseball again, because the parallels, if you're a hitter, man, and you're striking out and finally you're able to make contact with the ball and you're able to, get some balls into play, get on base and stuff, then you start to see those guys' batting percentage come up a little bit higher. And it's the same thing for him. He needs to be able to get some breaks on the ball. Now, credit some of these wide receivers. They have made some circus catches on him. But I thought it was also fascinating that Ryan Day said that they've had conversations this week, some tough conversations. His leash is short. They pulled him for Jermaine Matthews in the Northwestern game. Now Jermaine didn't necessarily have his best game. He got beat on a double move, and any competent quarterback, once you get later on the season, they're going to make that throw for a touchdown that Jermaine got beat on. But I thought it was fascinating that they had a very, very short leash for him in that Northwestern game. So will that be the case if Indiana's dialing him up and they point out that, hey, Denzel's the fish again? Will they have a short leash for him? That's going to be critical. So I think that for him, confidence, man, you got to have confidence.
Great stuff, as always, from Jonah Booker. Really appreciate it, JBook. Thank you, sir. And thanks to all of you. Really appreciate you guys tuning in. Join me for What We Learned live tomorrow, right after the Ohio State-Indiana game. Again, thanks to JBook. Thanks to all of you. Hope everyone has a great day, a great weekend. Enjoy the game tomorrow, Bucknutters. Go Bucks.